Hey everyone, I'm here to talk to you about chromaticism and in particular chromatic enclosures. Now, what these are used for is we're going into this area of creating color and interest in our playing. Arguably one way of going, how do I get that jazz sound in my playing? And I think a lot of it is chromaticism, and I deliberately leave it to later in the program before we start talking about it. The reason being is that chromaticism can make our playing really vague, and we start going for a strike rate of playing darts and going, well, if I throw 100 darts, then a bunch of them are going to land on the right spot and I'll get a score. Whereas what we want is saying, okay, I've only got 3 darts and I'm going to hit the point I want. That's what we're going to strive for. It's a bit more of a deliberate way, a skillful way of playing. So chromatic enclosures, the term chromatic enclosure really is about playing a semitone above and a semitone below your target note. So what I mean is, say I take a note as, I'm going to take a concert F, and I go, that's the... Now instead of just hitting it, I'm going to play the semitone above, which would be the G flat, and the semitone below, which is the E, and land on the F. So my target is still the F. It's all about the F. I'm not talking about, hey, I'm introducing all this other harmony. I'm just doing this little chromatic enclosure. And this is the concept that I'm going to try and show you how we can use into our playing and talk through it. So the first place to start with it, we just might take a cycle of fourths, and I might go around it and go, and so on. But try this idea of semitone above, semitone below. And so on. But where it gets really interesting and where it's really going to challenge our mind is putting it to chords. So we're going to walk through a bit of a worksheet, and hopefully by the end of it, the concept makes sense and you'll be able to play around with it. Like all of this, it's just a starting step, a launch pad for you to kind of explore and see what you like the sound of. So figure A is taking the C major 7, then add a semitone before each note. Now you notice that by the focus being on the C major 7 chord tones, that is still the sound coming through. It's getting colored by something else, but it's not the notes from the scale or anything. It's just this chromatic note. Now the same idea, approaching from below, and then I'm going to play a semitone below each chord tone. Where I think it's really interesting, and the concept we're going to explore, is this idea of chromatic enclosure. Imagine you've got your note, and we're going to enclose it with another series. So a semitone above and a semitone below, which is the combination of those two exercises. And if I wanted to, I could go up and down. Now, it's just something to practice and get your head around. As I said, it's about coloring, maybe adding a bit more nuance to the ideas you're playing. It's in addition to the foundations you've already got of playing chords. One exercise, you can create any exercise you want. All you gotta do is take a set of chord changes and apply this. Instead of just running up the straight chords, you would run at them using chromatic enclosures. So one idea is that, going back to the cycle of fourths, and this is figure C, is play the triads, and what I could do is maybe just put a chromatic enclosure around the first note. Then I might try it on the first 2 notes. And then around all of them. Now I'm thinking of that in my head on the fly, and I can confess, as much as I've been working on a few videos here, a few takes, I haven't practiced that. It's just thinking on the fly. And the point is finding the ones you like the sound of and getting your head into this idea that it's focusing on the chord tones but just coloring them a little bit. So the next thing in the fact, I want to talk about a great saxophone player in Sydney, Dale Barlow, and he played with Art Blakey and Cedar Walton in America. So I used to go to his house for lessons every week, and he would show me all these ideas. And one of the ones that really stuck was this scalic idea that incorporates using thirds, but also the chromatic enclosure. Chromaticism ends up being a passing idea. It's not our bread and butter of our improvising, like when we're learning how to play a G7 chord. It's really just, it's about color and shape along the way. So this idea of getting comfortable with that, it's just such a really nice idea. And you could take that and try playing that over jambalaya or summertime, whatever you want, whatever song you're working on. This idea that, again, the chromatic notes aren't part of the chords, but they work because they're passing and they're just kind of blurring. As long as you accent your target note and you accent it, it will work and be effective. So the last little thing I want to lead you on is that last time we talked about 2-5-1s, and I kept them very deliberately diatonic, as in the one key, and not coloring it with any of this chromaticism, because I wanted you to understand what the chords are and one way to connect them. If we look at a pattern from last week that originally was just... Now what I thought was, why don't we try using the same pattern, but put a bit of a chromatic enclosure, and I've got to shift the rhythm a bit, so I've made the first triplets to fit it all in. So all I'm doing is taking an idea and adjusting it to fit in. Another one would be... And I've written this one because what it's identified, we're not so, it finishes on a root note, but it's kind of moving a bit more in and out. So what I would encourage you to do, take a pattern that you really like, maybe one from a previous week, or write one out, put a chromatic enclosure into it and learn it. So it's just adjusting it to fit it in and see what it sounds like. And again, you can tweak it, but it's a really nice thing to incorporate into your playing. And I know for me, the first time I learned to do it was actually studying the music of Clifford Brown, a great trumpet player, playing his transcription. And I noticed that often he would finish his phrases with a chromatic enclosure, and often as he might turn around a line. So I started practicing and I got it under my fingers, and I found that this is a tool that I use regularly, and I think a lot of musicians do. So I implore you to check it out and see how you go.